Hello, Bay Ridge. Welcome to another edition of After Hours. If you are an astute, observant person who watches After Hours each week, then you are noticing I'm not in my normal location. All I'll say is pay attention to our Facebook page and other media this week, and you will find out why I am filming in this location. What I want to talk about today is the heart of God's law. What is really behind the law of God? We've been looking at this parable of the man and his two sons, oftentimes referred to as the parable of the prodigal son, which is really not the best description. And the central figure in this parable really is the father. The two sons are both reacting towards the father in distinct ways, and the heart of the father is the key issue in the parable. We know this because the parables are precipitated, we're told in Luke chapter 15, by the muttering of the Pharisees and the teachers of the law when they watched how the tax collectors and sinners were responding to Jesus and how he received them. They began to mutter against him, and so Jesus tells this series of three parables, which culminates in the parable of the father and the two sons. And all three parables are about someone seeking that which is lost, whether it's a shepherd seeking a lost sheep, whether it's the woman who's seeking the lost coin, or the father and the lost sons, as it really turns out. And the father is actually in the parable reaching out to both sons. We see his heart in how he runs to greet the younger son when he returns home, but how he also goes out to try and get the older brother to come in and rejoice with him. And we saw that the younger son this past Sunday left because he didn't really understand the heart of the father. He misunderstood his father. He misunderstood where joy would be found, and that's what led him off to where he lives. So it's not really a parable about the wrong actions of the younger son. It's really the heart of the father, and then the younger son and the older son's misunderstanding and wrong behavior towards that. And this points us back to how we need to understand the heart of God's law. What is the purpose of God's law? God's law is not arbitrary or capricious, but rather it's a reflection of God's character. It is a reflection of who God is and therefore the way he has made everything. Creation flows from God and then goes back to God. He is the ultimate reality in the universe. All other reality, everything else in creation, is really only a reflection of him. And so ultimately the true, the beautiful, the good are merely reflections of God himself. And so this is why sin, from a biblical point of view, is ultimately self-destructive. We were made to know, love, glorify, and enjoy God now and forever. And sin is anything that's not in accord with God's nature and his character, the way God is, and it's anything that prevents us or hinders us from knowing, loving, serving, enjoying, glorifying God. Anything that does that would be in the way. And so sin is quite literally the undoing of God's good creation and an exile out back into chaos. So sin is undoing the good things that God has done, the true things that God has done, the beautiful things that God has done, and it's kind of an unraveling of all of those things. And this is the reason God gives us his law, because he says sin is not only destructive of you, it's destructive of the people and things you care about, it's ultimately destructive of all of creation. So God calls us out of our sin back to him, where true life, true joy, true meaning is found. So I want to encourage you as we think through this to remind ourselves, God is never arbitrary or capricious. Your Father loves you. He loves me. He is for our good. He desires that which is our ultimate good. So I want to encourage you to respond to God's law that way. And when we're struggling with sin and we find ourselves wanting to wander, to step back and remind ourselves that God is always for our good. I hope you have a great week. I look forward to seeing everybody this weekend as we gather for worship together. And I want to remind us, we also have our vision meeting immediately following the meeting on Sunday. I look forward to seeing you then. God bless.